You're watching NFT Talk with Brick Astley. GM, welcome to NFT Talk. I'm your host, Brick Astley. The purpose of this talk show is to talk one-on-one art on exchange art. Today, I'm joined by Natalie Christensen and JimEyre. Welcome to NFT Talk. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Hey, really appreciate your time. Both of you are really groundbreaking artists in your own right. But for those that are meeting you for the first time, could you give a little bit of background information on each of yourselves and then how you two came together to collaborate on Altered States, Altered Scapes?
James, I think the question was just the individual artist journey before Jim and I met.
Yep.
I was not an artist. I spent 25 years as a therapist, a psychotherapist, which I loved that career. I think I was very well suited for it. And, it was very fulfilling. I was always interested, though, in art and design and fashion and arranging spaces. I never did anything professionally, but I just enjoyed it very much. In 2014, I made a decision to leave my lifelong home of Kentucky and I moved to New Mexico. And from there, I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I started making photographs of this place, which is known to be a pretty magical environment. It is that. And I don't know, I became very passionate about it. I wasn't doing it for any particular reason. I didn't have a goal in mind other than making images that I liked, and I was sharing them on Instagram. And I think social media is sort of how I developed initially as an artist. I just looked at a lot of imagery and tried to emulate styles that I particularly liked. I explored a lot of different genres of photography. I didn't have a good context for photography, though. I hadn't studied it formally. I didn't know the history of photography, but I found that I really enjoyed it and just sort of took over my life from about 2016 to now. I still work in consulting and more on the therapy end of things. That's what mostly pays the bills, but I would say I'm a full-time artist as well, and have had a lot of wonderful things happen in my life since I started making photographs, including meeting Jim and working with him on our collaboration.
Thank you for that wonderful history about you. How did you and Jim come together?
Jim, is it okay? Do you want to take that question or you want me to take it?
No, you can take that question if you want.
I found Jim's work on Instagram probably around 2016. At that time, he was working in a style that I would call urban minimalism, I think, which is what I was feeling like was my interest, an area that I really wanted to focus in on. And he was one of the best I had seen. And I remember following him and just looking at his images and really studying them and learning from what he was doing. We hadn't communicated at all. He wasn't following me at that point. Eventually, I'm not sure how he found my work. You weren't. He started following me. And I think it just developed from there. We just started DMing occasionally. I got sick and I dropped out of Instagram for a while. I was gone for, I don't know, probably a month and a half because I was recovering from something. And Jim would check in with me periodically. Are you okay? How are you doing? I think our friendships are developed then. But then from there, we just talked about photographs a lot. I would send him my work, ask him what he thought. He would send me work. We would just talk about image making. And probably in 2017, he said, "Why don't we collaborate?" And I said, "Okay." I don't know what that means exactly. What are we going to do?
I like how
And
she drops that in so casually. From my end of the thing, I was sort of I was utterly nervous at the prospect of asking Natalie to collaborate. It took me so much time to pluck up the courage to, because I had, you know, when I discovered Natalie's work on Instagram, you know, I was blown away with it. The form, the color, the light, you know, all the amazing things that I strive for in my grey land that I live in. And I just couldn't understand how she lived in this place that was able to create these amazing images. So I was blown away with jealousy about her context of where she was sort of taking these images. So bizarrely it was a really nerve-wracking thing for me to ask her to collaborate, but I did. I plucked up the courage on a basis that I was expecting her to say no. But I had seen that she had collaborated with some other artists before, and I thought, well, but they weren't photographic ones. They were sort of, there was an illustrator, I think, and a painter, and someone who sort of worked on photographs, but was more artistic with them. So I was sort of, you know, I had no idea that she would say yes, but when she did, and she sort of just alluded just then, sort of like, okay, great, what should we do? And I was like, I don't know, you know, but I was so sort of taken aback that she said that she would, that I sort of had to really think quite hard about what we could do. So, but yeah, so that is the meeting and the joining of us, I guess.
mm-hmm.
And
the work that that you're seeing, the altered states, altered scapes, the majority of that was made in 2017 and 2018. And Jim started sending me these photo montages that mixed my work with his work to make these new images. And I remember the first one he sent me, I was just completely blown away by it. And Jim is kind of the mastermind of those compositions of work. I mean, I certainly, we're using my images, his images, but he does the initial rough sketch and then sends them to me, and I'll make some suggestions. But I still very clearly remember the day he sent me the first one, and I don't know what he was thinking, but I was thinking, wow, this is great. I love it. Keep going.
I remember which one it was. I think it was I can't remember what it's titled, but it's the orange one in the series.
Yeah, yes, that was the first one
that I had sent, and I, you know, and even that one, that developed massively over time, but it was just this really, really bad sort of smashed together, really low res images that were screen grabbed off Natalie's feed and my feed, and just were sort of comped together to create this image. There was no rhyme or reason for it, and then from there it just became, I don't know, some sort of obsession to just keep going through her Instagram feed, finding images that told stories that I sort of related to, and then I'd put them together with mine, and then I'd send them back. Then she would send me new images, and I would put those in, and you know, and that's how it sort of progressed. And then we sort of started getting a bit more sort of serious about it, and that's where Natalie titled it Altered States, Altered Scapes. And I don't know if you want to talk about that, because that's where I felt we were really in a fascinating place at that point. So we had some images, and then Natalie had this beautiful title for the work, which you explain, Natalie, because you explain it so beautifully.
I think as we were making this work, we weren't consciously aware of what it was about. But I was thinking, what do we talk about all the time? What are our conversations mostly about? And it was about the struggle of being on social media and having that audience and having that platform built in a particular way that rewarded us with likes, comments, follows, trying to understand an algorithm, trying to understand why some work worked and others just didn't connect with an audience, or maybe it did, no one was seeing it. And so our angst, I guess, about how we felt in that space, the ambivalence of it, how it just, we were looking at imagery all the time. It just felt like we were falling a rabbit hole. And we were not really clear about whether what we were looking at was real or not real. And at that time, we were mostly looking at photography. Now, when I think about all the art that we see on Twitter, it's, you know, really wild and crazy. There's so many things going on. But I think what we were trying to say with that work is that our minds were being altered by being in that space. Maybe our creative process was being altered by being in that space. Would we make that same work if we weren't sharing it on social media? Not the collaboration necessarily, but just our own personal work. How was that subtly being shaped by a social media platform? So Altered States was a film from the 1980s that William Hurt starred in, and he was a psychologist, I think, and he would immerse himself in a sensory deprivation tank and have all these wild hallucinations. And that's sort of how social media feels sometimes, like all our senses are being turned off except the visual one. And the longer time you spend there, the kind of crazier it can make you feel, even though it looks pretty normal on the surface. And so Altered States is the first part of the title. Altered Scapes, we were altering urban landscapes. So that's where the title comes from and the ideas behind it.
I think that's a really interesting question to be asking with the art, is like, our creativity being influenced by these different likes or having to chase the algorithm. And, you know, perhaps, you know, so like, I think that's totally a valid question. Do you feel like your artwork has been shaped by it as well?
I don't know how it could not be, but at least for me. I can't speak for Jim, but you know, since I've been doing photography, it's been on social media. I've always shared it there, but that's where I began in a way. I grew up there, and that might be too strong a way to describe it, but
that's a way to culminate the community and such and so forth.
No. Right. And so of course they want us to pay attention to the number of likes, the number of shares, the number of followers, all that stuff. To say that people aren't paying attention to that, I just don't believe it. So whether you're consciously aware of it influencing your decisions or not, I mean, if you spend a lot of time on those platforms, I just feel like it's inevitable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I've come from a creative background from the off. I went to art college, you know, I went to university to study architecture, all those sort of things, and then carried on my creative pathway. So my conversations are slightly different to Natalie's. Mine are sort of like, I'm always fighting. I mean, Natalie will vouch for this. I'm always sort of at loggerheads. I'm always tussling with social media. what it represents and all the noises that are in there, and mentally struggling with it. And it's all to do with this sort of, real life, fake voices, fake images, over saturated images, all this sort of stuff. And what I found really funny is when we started talking about this conceptually, not just about the images we were creating, but conceptually in terms of the thought, we sort of started applying some of, you could call it clickbait or like fodder, whatever. So, we would put in bright colors, and we would put in lots of shadows, and we would put in lots of geometry and all this sort of stuff. And what was really funny was that when I would post one of the images that were all fake, they actually, if you looked at them for more than a flick of a thumb, you would realize that they were fake. But the nature of the beast is you flick through these images really quick and you react, and that's it. And so we would put up one of our collaboration images, and it would go through the roof on my feed, which was always notoriously a struggler. And it sort of picks up now and then, but it was always sort of like I was always the moody feed, and I would put up one of these like really like hyper colored magical scapes, and it would go through the roof. And then I'll put up one of my images and it would just die. But what was really fascinating was it sort of was proving our point. It was sort of like, God, if it goes back to, well, and it's sort of what Natalie's saying, is social media shaping your practice? Well, in her case, yes. In my case, yes too, but I'm always fighting it. I'm always sort of like, I just can't sort of accept that it is happening to me, even though it is. So it's sort of like a real funny tussle that I have with my work. But I think it is a really fascinating thing that we were proving our point as we were talking. We were putting images up, and it was just sort of happening right before our eyes. As a sort of case in point.
It must be pretty vindicating, like having this thesis and then having it proven right there, point in case. And it was kind of more of like an experiment too, because going between the different feeds, your feed versus her feed, and then seeing the different reaction must be very vindicating. What kind of advice would you give to someone to an artist that may be new to the space, that's struggling with maybe feeling like they need to be compelled by going for the likes, searching for things that are along those patterns and purposefully searching it out, or those that might be struggling with what we were alluding to earlier, just mental health and being in the Web3 space? Because I think that's an important topic for artists that should definitely not be overlooked.
God, yeah. Natalie, I'll let you tackle that one.
That's a loaded question. I'm sorry.
I think what I find refreshing about Twitter, since moving from Instagram to Twitter, is that there is a lot more open conversation about this topic. People are very vocal about the impact of spending so much time on social media and how it makes them feel. I think the fact that so many artists on Twitter are trying to sell their work, and it's a highly competitive environment that adds a whole nother layer of challenge for all of us. And I'm certainly not immune. I think everything in moderation, and either way, I mean, I would never tell an artist chase the likes. That's going to make you feel good about being in the space or fulfilled. I mean, that wasn't our conscious decision. It was more of just something that progressed over time as a question that we had, and just examining our own conversations. But it's a cliche, but anyone who's there as an artist should make the work that pleases them first. And, it's still a really hard path. The artist path is extremely difficult. And to also be doing it in front of an audience that is never turns off. They're always there. You may not think they're there because you're not getting any feedback, but they're definitely always there. So yes, taking care of yourself in all the possible ways. I mean, I have a support group. Jim is my number one. And then I also have a community of people here in Santa Fe that we lean on each other they're all artists, they're all on Twitter, and we talk about the struggles of it all the time, not in a space, but, just together as friends, texting each other or meeting and just saying, man, this really sucks sometimes. I need a break. Or I had a great day, or I made a sale, or whatever. It's not all bad, but I think people need to know what they're getting into.
Support groups and moderation definitely are key.
Yes.
Yeah, again, my take on it is a not so healthy experience, I would say, to be honest. Because again, it's sort of like, I think ultimately, I think it's about accepting, it's like having a personal take on what that space is about. And my personal take is it's all about sales and it's all about money. So even friendships that you build on there, of course, there's really beautiful people on there that you can meet and you can sort of converse with via DMs or whatever. But 99% of it is all underpinned by another conversation, which is money and sales. They are, or we are, I'm not saying them and me, I'm saying we are all complicit in the fact of a hard sell, because it's what keeps the space alive. It's the dopamine of, it's not even about likes now, it's about money. Mm-hmm. And that might sound really a dark observation, but I think it's true. All the conversations about mental health, I would say it's all about money, it's all about sales. So, and it is it's just another form of addiction in a way.
I think I'm sorry to interrupt, Jim. I apologize. Keep going.
Yeah, it's okay.
I was going to say that
shine some light.
Even though this work was made in 2017 and 2018, it's our first collaboration. Other collaborations series came after this, but I feel like this conversation is still relevant, even though the work was made a few years back. Twitter is Instagram on steroids times 1,000. And people are, as Jim said, it is about sales. And that is why I wanted to sell more work. I've had gallery representation for a number of years. I've had, a lot of eyes on my work, but I've never had the kind of income that I've had from NFTs over the last, 5 months. I've made more than I ever did selling physical work. And I think that, I was happy with where my career was before coming into NFTs. So that's really powerful. That it's hard to turn away from that. Jim and I invest a tremendous amount of money in our collaboration. It's not cheap to put on exhibitions. We're doing more than selling this or showing this work on social media. We're doing installations, and we've had, I think, 4 exhibitions now. We travel. I go to London. Jim comes over here. We try to meet and work on things together in the studio. It's not all done from a distance. So those NFT sales really help us further our work together. So for that, I'm really grateful. But it does it's hard sometimes. I wanted to say one other thing too about, I mentioned those behind the scenes DMs that Jim and I had, and trying to, make a connection between those and the work that we were making. We ultimately made a film of our actual DMs, where we're communicating back and forth, and that I screenshot lots of our actual DMs over time. And then we had some really brilliant guys who put it together and made a film of how we were actually talking to each other about these emotional, psychological challenges we were facing of sharing our work on social media. And that's on our website, which is 4952.com.
I'm definitely going to go check out that film here after we wrap up this interview here. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing the story of how you two came together, and the overall, question that you're asking. I think it's super important to ask ourselves. And I think though the work was done previously, that the message is relevant, and it's going to continue to be relevant. Before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or any final closing statements that you want to call attention to for our viewers?
Yeah, I've just got one more very quick thing just to talk about the Web3 space. I think it's really important. It's not going away. It's a real thing, and so is crypto and all those sort of things. So, I think you'd be naive not to engage. I think it's about managing a way to be in the space healthily, and just understand it, and just be at peace with yourself about whatever you do and whatever you put out there. Just be happy with that post, and when you turn up to do something in that space, and that's okay. It's okay to be there for one post or 3 posts or whatever you want to do on that day or whenever day you turn up, and that's okay. And I sort of think, that's the balance, the real world balance with the Twitter, the Web3 balance. It's got to fight. You just have to find your place in it and be happy and be okay with your presence there. That's sort of what I wanted to say at the end of my spiel that I just gave you.
I would jump in and say that I'm really happy that we put this work on Exchange. I really like that community. It's smaller than some of the larger platforms, and we've had so much support from the beginning. Everything from technical support to sharing the work and getting in front of people who might be interested in collecting it. And it's just been a really great experience to be there. So I'm thankful for that.
Hey, thank you for that. And Exchange is very grateful for you to be on our platform and to have our NFT talk here today. With that in mind, be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, and be kind to Mother Earth. Do a little bit of trash pickup while you're out touching some grass, and because then we can come back and have a wonderful Earth for this crypto that we're using. Always, GM.